Mastering your mind is the first step toward transforming your life, because every action you take begins as a thought. When your thoughts are scattered, reactive, or governed by fear, your decisions follow the same pattern. Most people spend their lives trying to fix external situations without ever addressing the internal patterns that created those situations in the first place. When you shift your internal dialogue, you shift the foundation on which your entire life is built. Your mind is constantly collecting information, forming beliefs, and shaping the way you interpret the world. If those beliefs are rooted in doubt, insecurity, or past failures, then even the greatest opportunities will feel out of reach. But when you discipline your mind to operate from confidence, clarity, and conviction, you begin to see possibilities where others see obstacles. The external world doesn't change first. Your perception does. Mastering your mind requires an honest evaluation of the thoughts you have allowed to stay unchecked. You must learn to question the stories you repeat to yourself, the assumptions you make about your potential, and the fears you've accepted as truth. Many people are held hostage by mental narratives that no longer serve them, narratives built during moments of weakness or uncertainty. Breaking free from those stories is the beginning of internal liberation. Consistency becomes easier when your mind is aligned with your purpose. When your thoughts support your goals, discipline stops feeling like a punishment and becomes a natural expression of who you are becoming. The reason so many people struggle with consistency is because they are trying to force actions that contradict their internal beliefs. When your mind and actions agree, progress becomes almost effortless. Your environment plays a massive role in the state of your mind. The voices you surround yourself with either feed your confidence or fuel your insecurity. You cannot expect mental strength while entertaining conversations, relationships, and influences that weaken your belief system. Protecting your mind is not selfish. It is necessary for growth and long-term success. Mastering your mind also means mastering your emotional responses. You cannot allow temporary feelings to dictate permanent decisions. Emotions are real, but they are not reliable guides. When you learn to process emotions without letting them take control, you begin operating from wisdom instead of impulse. This is where maturity replaces reaction and power replaces vulnerability. The mind becomes stronger through input, repetition, and focus. What you read, what you watch, what you listen to, and what you consume becomes the raw material your thoughts are built from. If your input is weak, your thinking will be weak. If your input is empowering, your thinking becomes sharper and more strategic. You must feed your mind with material that elevates your perspective and expands your vision. Mental mastery requires learning to sit with discomfort instead of running from it. Growth often feels inconvenient, unfamiliar, and challenging because it is pulling you out of old mental patterns. When you stop avoiding discomfort, you start training your mind to stay steady under pressure. This is the foundation of resilience, and resilience is the gateway to transformation. A mastered mind is not one that never wavers, but one that knows how to realign quickly. It recognizes when fear is creeping in, when doubt is whispering, when distraction is pulling it off course. Instead of collapsing under the weight of these moments, it recalibrates and redirects. This ability to return to focus is what allows you to stay on track while others drift away from their goals. When you master your mind, you reclaim authority over your identity, your habits, and your future. You stop living reactively and start living intentionally. You stop settling for whatever life hands you and start creating the life you were meant to live. Focus demands more from you than a burst of motivation or a moment of excitement. It requires a level of commitment that continues even when your energy drops, your mood shifts, or your circumstances become inconvenient. Most people confuse focus with inspiration, believing they need to feel driven before they act, but focus is a deliberate choice that must be made long after the feeling fades. When you understand this, you stop waiting for ideal conditions and start choosing intentional action every single day. There will be mornings when you wake up tired, distracted, or overwhelmed, and those are the moments that reveal your true level of focus. Anyone can stay committed when things are easy, but true focus is proven when your mind wants comfort, yet you move toward your purpose anyway. You begin to see that discipline is not built in excitement, but in repetition. in those quiet decisions that no one celebrates, but everyone eventually sees the result of. Choosing focus daily means you stop negotiating with your excuses. When you allow your emotions to choose your actions, you lose control of your direction. But when you make decisions based on your goals instead of your feelings, you develop the kind of internal strength that separates leaders from followers. Your results begin to reflect your priorities, not your moods. And your consistency becomes a force that reshapes your path. Every day brings distractions designed to pull you away from what truly matters. Whether it's people demanding your attention, problems begging for your reaction, or temptations offering you immediate gratification, the world will always try to redirect your focus. When you choose to concentrate your energy on what builds your future rather than what entertains your moment, you gain clarity that others lack. This clarity sharpens your decisions and multiplies your progress. Focus requires sacrifice because you cannot give your attention to everything and still expect to achieve something meaningful. You must decide what deserves your mind and what must be eliminated, even if it's comfortable or familiar. The more committed you become to your priorities, the easier it is to walk away from things that drain your energy instead of fueling your purpose. Focus becomes a filter that protects your time and elevates your standards. Making focus a daily decision means understanding that progress is rarely dramatic. Most breakthroughs come from consistent effort, not sudden miracles. When you show up day after day, even in small ways, you build momentum that compounds over time. The person who outfocuses everyone else eventually outperforms them, not because they are more talented, but because they refuse to quit on ordinary days. Your future depends less on your ambition and more on your ability to stay locked in when distractions seem harmless and excuses sound reasonable. This is where many people fall off track, not from lack of desire, but from lack of daily discipline. They underestimate how easy it is to drift away from their goals, one small compromise at a time. Choosing focus daily keeps you anchored to your vision and prevents your potential from slipping through your fingers. Focus also demands that you manage where your attention goes mentally, not just physically. It's not enough to sit down and work. Your mind must be present, engaged, and committed. When your thoughts wander into fear, comparison, or doubt, your productivity weakens even if your body is still in motion. Training your mind to stay in the present moment builds a mental sharpness that pushes your performance to a higher level. With each day that you choose focus, you strengthen the foundation of who you are becoming. You begin to operate from purpose instead of impulse and from discipline instead of distraction. Your actions become predictable in the best way, not because you are rigid, but because you are aligned. You understand that focus is the bridge between intention and achievement, between desire and transformation. When focus becomes part of your daily identity, you no longer rely on temporary emotions to guide your direction. You move with a sense of stability, determination, and conviction that does not disappear when life becomes challenging. You realize that every decision you make is either pulling you closer to your vision or pushing you further away, and choosing focus daily is what ensures you are always moving forward. You said, your habits shape your destiny. Expand it and don't add any ending sentence and make it lengthy in 10 paragraphs without heading and conclusion. ChatGPT said, our habits act as the invisible architecture of your future, quietly constructing the life you are moving toward long before you can see the results. Every repeated behavior, every choice you make without thinking, and every pattern you allow to continue becomes a brick in the foundation of your destiny. Many people look at their goals with passion, but their habits tell a different story. The truth is simple. You cannot build a powerful future with weak habits. Each day, your habits either reinforce your potential or undermine it. When you repeatedly choose discipline, growth, and intentional action, you create a version of yourself capable of handling greater opportunities. But when you repeatedly choose procrastination, comfort, and inconsistency, you build a future that reflects those patterns as well. Habits do not lie. They always reveal what you are truly committed to, even when your words try to say otherwise. Habits are powerful because they operate even when you are not consciously thinking. They become autopilot, guiding your actions without requiring energy or motivation. This is why creating strong habits is essential. Once they are established, they carry you forward even on days when you don't feel inspired. Instead of relying on emotion, you rely on structure. And that structure becomes the engine of your progress. Your habits also shape your identity. Every action you repeat sends a message to yourself about who you are becoming. When you wake up early, stay disciplined, prioritize growth, or finish what you start, you reinforce the identity of someone who is consistent and committed. But when you repeatedly avoid responsibility, break your promises, or choose convenience over purpose, you reinforce an identity that limits your potential. Identity and habits are connected, each feeding the other in a continuous cycle. Small habits are often underestimated because their impact isn't immediate. People look for dramatic change, overlooking the tiny decisions that accumulate into massive transformation over time. It's not the big actions that define your destiny, it's the consistent ones. Something as simple as reading a few pages a day, making one better choice, or eliminating one negative behavior can shift the direction of your entire future if repeated long enough. Habits thrive in environments that support them. If your surroundings encourage laziness, distraction, or negativity, your habits will reflect that atmosphere. Likewise, if your environment pushes you toward excellence, discipline, and clarity, your habits will rise to that level. This is why protecting your environment is essential. It shapes what feels normal to you, and what feels normal eventually becomes what you repeat. It's important to recognize that habits are not just physical, they are mental as well. The thoughts you repeat, the beliefs you reinforce, and the emotions you rehearse become internal habits that influence your external behavior. If your mental habits are rooted in doubt or fear, your decisions will mirror that. If your mental habits are built on confidence, resilience, and growth, your actions will align with strength. Changing your habits requires awareness, honesty, and patience. You must be willing to look at your current routines without excuses and ask whether they support the future you want to create. This evaluation can be uncomfortable because it exposes the truth about how you spend your time and what you truly prioritize. But this honesty is the starting point of transformation, because you cannot change what you refuse to confront. As you create new habits, you begin replacing old patterns with stronger ones. At first, this process feels unfamiliar because you are interrupting routines you've practiced for years. But discomfort is a sign of growth, and repetition is what ultimately rewires your behavior. Over time, what was once difficult becomes automatic, and what once drained you becomes natural. You begin to experience the power of habits working in your favor. The more consistently you strengthen the habits that support your vision, the more aligned your life becomes. Your confidence rises because you trust yourself to follow through. Your progress accelerates because your actions are rooted in intention rather than impulse. And your destiny becomes clearer because every habit you repeat builds a future that reflects discipline, purpose, and long-term transformation. Breaking the patterns that hold you back begins with recognizing that many of the limitations you experience today are not caused by outside forces, but by internal cycles you've carried for years. These cycles often feel normal because you've lived with them so long that they've become familiar, even comfortable. But familiarity doesn't mean they are healthy or aligned with your goals. The first step toward freedom is acknowledging that the routines, thoughts, and behaviors that once felt harmless may now be the very things stopping your growth. Some patterns show up as procrastination, disguised as waiting for the right time. Others appear as excuses that sound reasonable but consistently lead you away from progress. Sometimes the pattern is emotional, reacting out of fear, withdrawing when challenged, or repeating the same negative stories about yourself. These patterns create invisible walls, and unless you confront them, you will continue walking in circles no matter how much you desire change. Breaking patterns requires courage because patterns often protect your comfort, not your growth. They create illusions of safety, convincing you that staying the same is less risky than evolving. But nothing changes until you challenge what feels comfortable and step into what feels unfamiliar. Growth always introduces discomfort because it demands a new level of awareness and responsibility. When you push past this discomfort, you begin to discover a version of yourself that was hidden behind years of repetition. Patterns are often reinforced by the environments you keep. If you are surrounded by people who normalize negativity, inconsistency, or small thinking, it becomes difficult to rise above those patterns. Breaking free may require setting boundaries, limiting access, or stepping away from relationships that keep you tied to old versions of yourself. It's not about abandoning people, it's about refusing to remain in spaces that suffocate your potential. Many of these limiting patterns are rooted in past experiences, moments where you felt rejected, overlooked, embarrassed, or unprepared. Those moments planted seeds of doubt that grew into behaviors designed to protect you from vulnerability. But what once protected you may now be preventing your progress. Instead of avoiding new challenges, you must learn to rewrite the meaning of those past moments so they no longer dictate your future actions. Breaking patterns means becoming aware of your triggers. You must notice what situations cause you to shrink, what conversations drain your confidence, and what thoughts immediately pull you into self-sabotage. Awareness allows you to interrupt the cycle before it takes control. When you recognize the early signs of an old pattern, you can redirect your response and train your mind to choose differently. As you begin creating new responses, your identity starts to shift. Instead of responding from fear, you begin responding from strength. Instead of avoiding responsibility, you take ownership of your path. Instead of repeating behaviors that limit you, you start practicing ones that empower you. Each small shift weakens the grip of your old patterns and strengthens your ability to rise into a new level of maturity and discipline. Breaking patterns also requires consistency. You cannot replace years of repetition with a single decision. You must repeatedly choose the new response until it becomes your new automatic behavior. This repetition builds new mental pathways, rewiring your mind to support growth instead of resistance. Over time, what once felt difficult becomes natural, and what once held you back loses its power. It's important to understand that every broken pattern creates space for a new possibility. When you stop repeating behaviors that drain you, you create room for habits that elevate you. When you stop believing thoughts that weaken you, you create space for beliefs that strengthen your purpose. When you stop clinging to limitations, you open the door to opportunities that once seemed unreachable. As you break the patterns that have held you back, you begin to experience a new level of freedom. Freedom in your thinking, your decisions, and your future. You start realizing that you were not trapped by circumstances, but by cycles you had the power to change all along. Clarity and intentionality reshape the way you move through life because they strip away confusion and force you to operate with purpose. When you are clear about what you want, your mind becomes sharper, your decisions become easier, and your actions gain direction. Most people aren't struggling because they lack time. They're struggling because they lack clarity. Time is only powerful when it is attached to a vision. And without that vision, even the longest days become wasted opportunities. When your goals are vague, your energy becomes scattered. You drift from task to task, idea to idea, without ever creating real progress. But when you define exactly what you are working toward, your life organizes itself around that direction. You stop giving your attention to things that don't matter, and you start pouring your energy into actions that actually move you forward. Clarity becomes a filter that protects your purpose from being diluted by distractions. Intentionality amplifies the effect of clarity because it turns your vision into conscious action. It means you stop operating on autopilot and start choosing how you spend your time, where you place your attention, and what you allow into your life. Intentional people don't rely on luck or inspiration. They create momentum through deliberate decisions. They understand that every moment carries weight, and every choice either builds their future or steals from it. When you move with clarity and intentionality, you begin making decisions that are aligned instead of emotional. You stop reacting to the noise around you and start responding from a place of purpose. This alignment eliminates unnecessary stress because you no longer feel torn between multiple directions. You know what matters, you know why it matters, and you act accordingly. This creates a sense of stability that time alone cannot produce. Clarity also reduces hesitation because it provides a roadmap. When you know where you're going, you stop questioning every move. instead of second-guessing yourself. You take bold action because the destination is clear. Hesitation comes from uncertainty, not from lack of ability. Once clarity is established, confidence naturally follows because your path becomes visible. Intentionality transforms ordinary moments into strategic opportunities. It means you approach your day with a mindset of direction rather than drifting. Instead of waiting for the right conditions, you take control of the conditions. You shape your habits, structure your time, and prioritize the things that align with your purpose. This shift turns your days into building blocks for something greater, rather than a collection of hours you barely remember. When you rely on time alone, you fall into the trap of assuming that results will eventually appear simply because days are passing. But time is neutral. It doesn't care whether you use it wisely or waste it. Without clarity and intentionality, time becomes filled with distractions and routines that lead nowhere. But with them, even a small amount of time becomes powerful because it is used with precision instead of randomness. Clarity gives you the ability to say no without guilt. When your vision is sharp, you recognize which opportunities align with your mission and which ones simply steal your focus. You stop feeling obligated to please everyone, and you start prioritizing the path that elevates your future. This selective focus prevents burnout and strengthens your discipline because you no longer waste energy on things that don't support your growth. Intentionality forces you to be present in your actions. It teaches you to give your full attention to whatever you're doing, whether it's work, growth, or rest. Being intentional means you invest your effort where it truly matters instead of spreading yourself thin. You operate with a mindset of purpose, understanding that small, consistent steps create massive transformation when done deliberately. When clarity guides your vision and intentionality guides your actions, time becomes a supportive resource instead of a controlling force. You no longer feel rushed, behind, or overwhelmed because your direction is strong and your decisions are mindful. You discover that success isn't about having more hours. It's about using the ones you have with power, precision, and purpose. This is the year you stop watering down your potential to make others comfortable. Bold, unapologetic commitment begins with the decision to stop living halfway, stop giving partial effort, and stop treating your goals like optional dreams. When you commit without hesitation, you step into a version of yourself that no longer accepts inconsistency as normal. You recognize that every breakthrough demands a level of dedication that goes beyond convenience and comfort, and you rise to meet that demand with intention. True commitment requires you to silence the doubt that has been echoing in your mind for years. It means you stop entertaining the excuses that once felt logical and start honoring the vision that has been calling you forward. You understand that commitment is not about how you feel in the moment, but about who you are choosing to become. Feeling motivated is temporary, but being committed creates a foundation that does not crumble when challenges show up. Making this your year of bold commitment means you stop giving energy to distractions that steal your future. You recognize that some opportunities look appealing but do not align with your path, and you walk away from them without apology. You stop allowing people's opinions to dictate your actions, and you stop shrinking your ambition just to fit into environments that were never built for your growth. Commitment requires clarity, and clarity requires boundaries. This is also the year you stop negotiating with your old habits. The behaviors that kept you stagnant in the past cannot follow you into the future you are building. Bold commitment means replacing laziness with discipline, replacing doubt with action, and replacing hesitation with certainty. You refuse to give power to the patterns that once delayed your progress because you understand that every day you delay is a day you cannot get back. Commitment demands consistency, and consistency demands sacrifice. You will have moments when walking away from comfort feels painful, but staying where you've always been will cost you far more. The path to greatness always requires letting go. Letting go of excuses, letting go of fear, letting go of the version of yourself that accepted less than what you were created for. That release is not loss, it is elevation. In this year of unapologetic commitment, you begin valuing your time differently. You stop wasting hours on mindless distractions and start investing them into things that build your future. You become intentional with your routines, selective with your relationships, and strategic with your decisions. You recognize that every minute has weight, and you treat your time as the resource that shapes your destiny. Bold commitment transforms your identity from someone who hopes to someone who executes. You stop talking about what you will do someday and start proving your dedication through action. Even small steps become powerful because they are backed by unwavering determination. Over time, these steps compound into momentum that cannot be stopped, even by setbacks or temporary struggles. When you commit fully, you remove the safety nets that once allowed you to quit. You step into the mindset that says failure is not final and obstacles are not personal. They are simply part of the process. This mindset builds resilience, strengthening your spirit and sharpening your focus. You begin to trust yourself more deeply because you see yourself following through on what you said you would do. Unapologetic commitment also means being bold about your goals. Even when others don't understand them, you no longer seek validation or permission. You understand that big visions require bold faith and that not everyone is meant to see the future you see. Your commitment becomes louder than your explanations, and your results become the proof no one can deny. This is the year you choose conviction over comfort and purpose over passiveness. This is the year you take ownership of your future without apology, without fear, and without hesitation. Your commitment becomes the driving force behind your growth, your progress, and your transformation.